Good evening. I'm your host, Jason Miles, and welcome to another episode of This is Revolution Podcast. If you are a returning listener or subscriber, fuck yeah. If you're new to the channel, welcome. If you like what you hear here, please leave a like and subscribe. It's a very passive gesture that goes a long way. Speaking of going a long way, let me bring in my co-host for the evening. She is the voice of reason for this show. She keeps a lot of it together behind the scenes and sometimes on the scenes. Please welcome M. Toussaint.
Hello.
How are you?
How are you, Jason?
Always stressed.
Always stressed.
A lot of system problems this afternoon. Dr. Claus is Richmond, California.
Yep.
Yay!
California.
That's where I'm from.
Where he's from? You were born in 1905.
Your mama was born in 1905.
According to this word. I would just like to say that I'm feeling very demure, very mindful tonight.
Why is that? Because of Dan?
That's a new trend. All the cool.
This is a new trend?
Mm-hmm.
To be mindful of Dan?
To be demure and mindful.
Oh, are you calling me an asshole?
No.
You sure? Because I feel a little insulted.
It's just a statement about myself.
I think you're doing that thing where you're like, hey, I'm going to be mindful and demure, but you're the asshole.
I don't know how comfortable your masculinity is with being demure and mindful as well.
You know what you were doing right now, Toussaint? This is what you're doing right now.
We coming for you,
nigga. I don't know if I appreciate this level of insubordination. You know, we're getting ready because there's nothing happy about this conversation that we're going to have tonight.
That's
and
right.
I'm sure it's going to be. I'm trying to be serious, and Dizzle says I'm 108 years old. Look, the city that I'm from, I was born in Oakland, California. I grew up in Richmond, California, and you can't find any Richmond stuff. And do you remember, Toussaint, like a few weeks ago, we were on the show, where it was after the show was over, and I was like, oh, there's this place that has Richmond stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a Richmond, what do you call this? Crew neck? Yeah.
What do the Brits call it? A jumper?
Jumper. I have a Richmond jumper. I love it. I love it. I was walking around TJ with this on Saturday, and there's never Bay Area people out here, and some from these kids from the Bay saw me, and it was the most Bay Area group of kids ever. It was like this mixed contingent of what are you?
Yeah.
Like a Laotian, some sort of kid that might have been Mexican or like half Iranian. You could have went either way.
Yeah.
Maybe some ambiguous mixed black kid, and they're like looking around, they see me, they're like, oh shit, there's a motherfucker from Richmond. And so they were asking me something and about Tijuana, and I was like, yeah, it's like over there. And they're like, oh, how do you know? I was like, you been here before? I was like, no, I live here. It's like, whoa.
Did they ask to come over?
Here? They were like, how do you live here? I was like, nigga, it's cheap here. And they just started cracking the fuck up. They started hyphy dancing. And then all this revolution was going dumb. It was awesome. You missed it. That never would have happened in New York. We would have had to pop a fire hydrant. And there's no fire hydrants here. So go fine.
These hydrants.
Poor Dan Melo. He's all serious. He wore his tweed jacket and everything for the evening.
With elbow patches.
Elbow patches. Ben Burgess heard that. He's like, I bid you good day, sir. Anyone watching this show is like, these people can't be serious. Like, yeah, sometimes.
Yeah.
20-minute intervals.
Right?
All right, I'm ready. I'm ready for my demure.
All right.
Is this demure?
Somewhat. I'll allow it. I'll allow
I can't nail it. I just can't do it.
it.
Okay. By the end of the show, I'll have demure.
All right.
We're gonna go to the champagne room too, by the end of the show tonight. Dan is ready for the champagne room. We haven't done one this week because there's been so many shows this week. It's been nonstop with freaking shows.
Yep.
So, and it's not like, yeah. So we're gonna go to the champagne room after this. Toussaint has been sharing videos with me that she wants you guys to see in the champagne room, so we can go through Toussaint stuff.
Dan does know about the feralness of the chat.
Dan is one of the people that has helped make the chat oh so feral and insane.
Dan is a veteran.
He's a vet. There's people I don't know if they're going to come back on the show.
That's right.
You know, Christian Parenti, I think we scared the shit out of him.
I think he's going to focus on tenure.
The look on his face when you asked him to say his pronouns.
That was so fun. I watched over so many times just to watch his expression change.
He doesn't know us, so he's like, wee.
I'm not gonna dignify that with an answer.
and it's like we probably shouldn't have done that to a first-time guest.
So much fun though.
I just want you guys to know that she said that, not me.
I was terrified. I was terrified the whole time.
Like, no one ever takes me seriously, but I just need everyone watching to know that that woman said that, not me.
That was so much fun though.
I was prepared to be. Look, I'm going to be serious now. Hold on.
Mm-hmm.
As the Democratic National Convention concludes tonight in Chicago, the party's platform is crystal clear, preventing the return of Donald Trump at all costs. But as we look toward the future, critical questions sounded great to type. Does not sound. It always makes me sound like Donald Duck when I try to say it. Critical questions remain. Now I'm Norm Finkelstein. There's critical questions. Poor Dan. Dan was like, Dan's gonna do Norm Finkelstein impersonations. Am I gonna get Pog Chaser and MLK in this? No, Dan. Critical questions remain. What, if anything, will fundamentally change under a potential Kamala Harris administration, especially when compared to another term for Joe Biden? And what was really changed under Biden's leadership? Take immigration, for example. The Biden administration halted the construction of Trump's infamous border wall and temporarily ended the Remain in Mexico policy, only to restart it again under pressure. In major metropolitan areas like New York and Chicago, immigration has become a potent political weapon used against the Democratic Party. Cities that once proudly declared themselves sanctuary cities now find themselves overwhelmed by the influx of migrants, a crisis exacerbated by Republican governors like Ron DeSantis, who have strategically relocated thousands of undocumented immigrants to these urban centers. While these political maneuvers play out, a legitimate and significant increase in migration to the U.S. southern border continues. Historically, immigration has been a bipartisan issue focused on determining the, quote, right kind of immigrant who should be allowed to enter. How does the Biden administration's Build Back Better immigration policy stack up against Trump's hardline approach? And what should we expect from Kamala Harris if she becomes president? If Trump returns to office, could we see the largest jobs program since the New Deal, but this time focused on mass deportation? Tonight, we're joined by lawyer and author of Borderlines, Dan Melo, to explore these pressing questions and more. Please welcome, coming all the way live from a bunker somewhere in the East, please welcome Dan Melo.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm all right. I mean, as good as it's gonna be before November, anyway.
So what? Look, man, you people,
Yeah.
you people wanted Kamala gone, or not Kamala, Joe Biden gone. Sorry, and you got your wish, and now you got Obama 2.0, and with Hillary Clinton's B sides, the slogans.
That's a new one.
So, I figured everybody would be happy. And can we admit she'd be the hottest president ever?
Well, I think somebody put. We have questions, Jason, about you and hers past. Like, is there a dating history? Thank you.
No. You know why? A, I'm not old enough, and B, I don't have enough money.
Okay.
And then there's this.
Because I nut quick.
There's that.
Oh my God. Wow. First 15 minutes. All right. All right. We're there.
Cackling Kamala. Can you imagine me and Kamala cackling together?
Oh my God.
Oh my God.
But how much could we get done, Jason, if you were to start dating Kamala
A
Harris?
lot, because I would talk to my father-in-law, Donald Harris, the great Marxist economist, Donald Harris, and be like, D money. We need you in here to advise right now. And then he come in, Lord of mercy, because he's Jamaican, and he just
Oh my God. But you didn't hear she's a communist.
Yeah, that's not true.
A CAMunist. A KAMunist.
Someone says Jason isn't into the Cougars. You fucking don't know me that well.
Oh boy.
I can't mess with you unless you got a bad hip. I'm trying to talk to you. If everything's functioning properly, I'm trying to talk to you. But we did bring Dan in here to not fuck with him.
Right.
Did you though?
It's gonna be funny. There's always gonna be there's always a comment of someone that says like, "I get tired of all the banter." It's like, do you know that we're gonna work out a whole fucking routine of banter? And we're gonna lie and say we're gonna ask a question, then banter more just to fuck with you. Yeah, like don't write those comments. Anyway, as I was saying, Biden's immigration policies versus Trump's. Where did the questions go? I lost them. Dan, how would you assess the Biden administration's immigration policies compared to those of the Trump era? Has there been any substantial change, or is it more of the same? As I said in the introduction, there seemed to be, I don't want to say lip service, but there were these kind of sweeping reforms that seemed like they were coming through, mainly the halt of construction of the border wall, which everybody looked at as Trump's big policy platform, and also the reinstatement of not reinstatement, what do you call it? We don't want Muslims here. Flyback.
Ending like Muslim ban, pausing MPP and, rolling back some of it. Yeah, there was so much that was promised. And like initially, right, we saw some of that stuff happen. And then the administration actually just had to face up to the realities of both like the political pressures that were going to get put on them to actually have more than just a temporary solution for some of that stuff. And I'm not in any way like, trying to give Biden a break. But the truth is that like the administration inherited a mess from Trump, had no plan going into that mess, and then quickly had to start walking back a lot of the changes that, I would hesitate to even call them positive because they were just not negative anymore. But at any rate, started, re-upping on the very things that they platformed against for Trump, right? To the point now where we are currently under basically the same restriction on asylum access and border access at the southern border right now as we had under Trump. Plus or minus the fact that now you have to use an app to get an appointment at the border for CBP that's in 3 languages plus English. anyway, we don't have to
now
talk
the
about
app, and it's not in any indigenous
Oh God, no,
communities.
hell no, hell no.
So how do look as someone that lives by the border? I don't know if people know what people look like at the border, but they definitely aren't a bunch of Mexicans trying to run through like people think it is. It's a ton of indigenous people from Central and South America, and a lot of Venezuelans as well.
Yeah.
And there's languages that these people speak that a lot of people don't know. So if you have to go through an app, I'm going to go out on a limb and say these people that have like these homemade carriers for their kids that are like hand woven probably don't have cell phone access.
Yeah.
How do you
And they
charge it
only
anyway?
yeah, and it's something that they have to actually repeatedly sign up for every morning, log in. There's only a certain amount of spots available that are designated as like a first come first serve, and the rest are thrown into a lottery. So somebody who just got there could get an appointment at the border the same day to be processed by CBP. Someone who's been there 7 months may be trying over and over, like you said, borrowing, stealing a phone, trying to get in. Anyway, and that's just to get an appointment, right? That's not anything. It's not entry. It's not immigration processing, your chance to seek asylum, none of that, right? Literally just to present yourself at the port of entry to be processed by CBP. So in so many ways, it is the exact same or worse in some senses that since Trump's time in office, we've built on the militarization piece of the border. We've built out technologies to start tracking people better. This is a kind of far-flung thing, but ICE is also, DHS, Department of Homeland Security, has also started collecting DNA samples from non-citizens on a massive scale. There's a report from Georgetown about it. It's a whole separate topic. But at any rate, there's so much happening right now that is, again, just as bad or worse. And as a reminder, I guess, for me coming into what may be another Trump era in practice, that the truth is like this machine is so efficient at grinding up people and destroying sort of any kind of actual progress towards community building, towards power, that the figurehead, the executive part, by and large sets the tone, but has far less power, as we've seen, to meaningfully inject some kind of positive reform. And so there was all that beautiful talk, and I expect the same thing from Harris, right? We'll hear a bunch of really nice things said about DACAs. Dreamers will, the family of U.S. citizens, but
he reinstated DACA, correct?
Well, in large part, like stopped the process of pulling it out from the the legal scheme. So as of right now, it is still more or less in place, plus or minus some lawsuits that are blocking parts of it.
And Title 42 has gotten a little more complicated, right? It's not they stopped enforcing it.
Yeah,
but they only enforce it for certain people.
Yeah, Title 42 has been basically rolled back, but again, never actually like faced a significant legal challenge. So it's sort of the future, right? That could be re-implemented at any time where people get bounced. And I guess to like hook that actually with a piece of legislation that VP Harris backed at the beginning of the year, that but for Trump actually probably would have had a good chance of passing a border bill that would have allowed CBP to completely shut off the border if a certain amount of there were a certain amount of encounters over a few days or a week period or something like that. So in effect, something like Title 42 or a Title 42 light that's now codified into law, right? That there's basically saying, yeah, you just do this anytime you want now. You don't have to have a public health or any other kind of crisis. You can just stop it.
They're just a public charge.
Yeah. It's just if too many people are coming, based on some arbitrary number that way.
Now, upon Biden winning for president, there has been a lot more people coming to the southern border. I think they had a record-breaking day a couple of years ago.
Yeah,
it was like 12,000 people showed up in one day. I forget which side of the southern border that was. How do you think the current administration has handled that since the Build Back Better plan was going to be so welcoming to immigrants and give so many people status?
Yeah. I think they again were met with the hard realities of the last century of bad capitalist foreign policy in Central America, and increasingly the push factors from places so far out of direct, U.S. Influence that way. So, like Harris, for example, part of her charge as VP coming in for Biden when they came into office was to try to work on some of the push factors, economic corruption, some of the other things that they had identified right in Central America. Obviously, it's nice in theory to say that you can throw a whole bunch of money in that and tell people, don't come, we're going to fix your problems at home, just stay there, right? So they've dumped.
Not come.
Yeah, thank you. Woo, that's our person. Anyway, no, the wild thing is that they've spent the last 4 years trying to address that problem to reduce migration from the Northern Triangle, only to have it completely overtaken by Venezuelans, Mexicans, Cubans. And to the point now where migration from the Northern Triangle is not even the highest amounts coming to the border at the moment. So what I'm saying is that, like, you can chase crises all day if you want to, even try to tackle them locally. But the truth is that, like, between climate change, global conflict, and just general displacement of people through all the other myriad of ways that poverty does, right? They're going to be pushed somewhere other than where they are. And increasingly it's here.
Toussaint, did you want to add anything?
Well, it's not exactly here. They're not. They're being pushed towards here, but they're getting stuck. Jason tells me about cultures mixing in Mexico, all kinds of people who.
There's a lot of Haitians down here.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about what's going on with Haiti and why Joe Biden was like, look, I'll take some brown people, but these ones, no. Too dark. Too dark. A lot of people don't know there's a paper bag test at the border. They don't even care what language you speak. Like, we don't even care. Nope, too dark. Next. So what?
There is black shots.
Do not come.
Oh.
Do not come.
I'm gonna come.
Oh Lord, don't get me fired. Okay.
Dan told all his friends, hey, I'm going to be this great podcast. These great young black guys. Tune in, guys.
Don't
They're
come.
really sharp.
Don't come.
Do not come.
Hello, everyone. I don't know exactly.
It's Jordan Peterson. It's Jordan Peterson saying come like a million times.
Oh God.
I'll just get out of that bank altogether.
You have a bank for this. Oh man.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
No, but
this ain't me.
It sure isn't.
No, but all jokes aside, the Haitian problem was something, again, that I think people cared about. The border for me is one of those things. Maybe it's because I live here now. It really resonates with me because we have these ebbs and flows of giving a damn. And when the kids were in cages, we gave a damn. When the dudes were on horseback with the whips, whipping the Haitians, it was like, can you get worse optics? Who said, hey, don't get the motorcycles, just get the horses. Don't even get a taser, just use the whips like we do when no one's looking. Like, who? It was like, this is horrible. And for a little bit, people were like, this is a problem. And it was like a little bit, and then no one gave a shit. So what is going on with the Haitians, Dan?
Yeah, I mean, again, as the, miscellaneous, again, decades or now close to a century of U.S. involvement in the Caribbean and Haiti and the Dominican Republic, like as stuff is destabilized there, yeah, folks have been fleeing and increasingly showing up at the border. And again, there's this problem not just in Haiti, but frankly across the board, is increasingly like, even if ICE wanted to, or DHS or anyone at the border, right? Like they wanted to start repatriating people back to their countries, they're not able to because these countries are a mess and they're not able to like deal diplomatically with it, or like, fuck no, you're not going to start just like randomly dumping folks back at the airport here. So at any rate, again, there's all of these tension and choke points that are happening at the border that now increasingly are spanning, so like you mentioned, not just indigenous populations, but folks from the other side of the planet who share nothing in common culturally with some of the other Latinx and Afro-Caribbean cultures.
Oh, there's Eastern Europeans here. There's Russians here. There's Ukrainians here.
Yeah.
People got stuck when that war happened. The LA Times wrote about this, and no one cared. There's big time ballroom dancing in Mexico City, and so there's a lot of Russians that come down, and not a lot, but there's Russians that do ballroom dancing, and they come down and compete or do shows. They got stuck when that war happened. There's some that are still stuck trying to get out. Like no one is talking about this border crisis.
Well, and the other interesting thing is that, like, while the U.S. obviously has plenty of control over its airports and can put some level of pressure on Mexico, like there's so many other countries in Central and South America that don't even have visa required travel, right? So folks, again, from all over the world are able to fly in to, Ecuador and start making their way, making that exact same trek that we saw, again, all of those migrant families over the years on the miscellaneous larger caravans of folks come through, making that exact same trek with folks up, again, Russian, Ukrainian, Chinese, Indian, all making that same trek. And all of that to say, right, is that like what I find, I guess, really compelling in this moment, like as a solidarity point, is really interesting that it's like, and sad in a way, that it's like there is a united suffering there, both at the border and if we turn to like what's happening even in the interior, right, with the migrant busing situation, pushing folks, like just shoving folks into different spots is bringing those realities to bear of like, what do you do with literally tens of thousands of people who have very little resources, that are not allowed to work legally here, have no access to public assistance through the federal government, and basically are dependent either on family or, again, under the table kind of work, right? And so again, what do you start doing basically when refugee camps, for the first time, I think in our at least recent history, like are developing along our southern border, when you have no political will to act at all on the matter?
I do want to interrupt our flow with this question. I think this is pretty good. For someone trying to be more educated on immigration, what sources would Dan recommend?
Yeah. So if you want to like follow sort of just the main kind of liberal-ish block of thinking with a little bit of a left bent, there are a number of nonprofits. American Immigration Council does a lot of like really great, just like hour-long policy brief stuff. I tried in my book, I'm not trying to just plug it for its own sake, but I really did try in my book to give like a very short but comprehensive sort of look at like the present state of immigration. And I have a shitload of footnotes in there because I'm obsessive about that. So I'll actually, if I can remember, I'll send my like bibliography of stuff to
you. That would be great.
Share out. Because I have a whole bunch of stuff gathered there too.
Like the last good Zero book was yours, right?
Oh.
Yours and Paxton's. Guess we're not gonna have any more Zero writers on.
Keep fucking.
That was good.
No, but Dan's book was a compelling read that once you pick it up, it's not that long, it's like 160 pages, but once you pick it up, you can't put it down, and it kind of burns in your brain because it is a Marxist kind of explanation of immigration that I think is very important for people that watch these shows that want to go kind of beyond the liberal bend, is what you were saying, of what is the LA Times or the New Yorker or New York Times saying about immigration, because it's going to kind of fit within the two-party line, and people probably want to know a little bit more about the whys. But one of the things that I think is very interesting for this moment that we're in is the tables got really turned hard on the way people looked at asylum seekers, undocumented, whatever adjective, noun you want to throw in there. We don't look at them the same way, especially in the Black community in places like Chicago, because I think the one thing the Republicans did brilliantly that Trump tried to do, but couldn't do it on a federal level, was to bus migrants to cities that were declaring themselves sanctuary cities. Because it felt to me, I know there are some places that were trying to get some of these things passed before Trump even got in office, but it did feel like there was a speed up process to get certain things done. A lot of it was rhetorical, because a lot of municipalities will work with federal government like ICE. There's only a few cities that really won't deal with you. Kamala was real big on this because her and Trump get in the office about the same time, which was trying to make California a real deal sanctuary city that wasn't going to deal with ICE. Can you discuss the Republican strategy of relocating undocumented migrants to Democratic strongholds like Chicago and New York, and how that's affected the local governments and their policies? And can we kind of talk about the long-term effects of these tactics, not just on the Democratic Party, but kind of on these municipalities and this as a strategy moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, like at the outset, right? I'll just say, like, obviously, like Greg Abbott's a piece of shit, and he's a horrible person.
Oh,
Yes.
yes.
But at that being said, right, like as a political stunt, it has seemed to pay off, because shipping, again, if you were to ship any large number of people who again have no access to a lawful way to obtain money, which means that they also can't open bank accounts, they can't get housed, like the list goes on and on and on and on, right? If you start sending those folks en masse to places where they can't easily find resources, they can't plug into communities that would help them otherwise, yeah, you're going to start creating a problem. I guess in this, not unlike sort of how, the unhoused population kind of gets bandied around parts of California, right? It sort of gets dumped on.
This is a little more massive because you're talking about in the Chicago situation, because I think that's where the numbers were the most. But I think New York also, Tucson, you had like 20 or 30,000 people dumped on you in the last couple of years. Chicago, their homeless population has literally tripled.
Yeah.
And the way the conversation was brought down was the first thing the city is doing is like, okay, we got to put them in the hotels. We're going to put them in this. We're going to put them in. We got to put this. We got to do this. We got to do this. And the amount of money that the city of Chicago was spending was easily spun into those people are getting your funding dollars. And that's all that it took for you to have the president of the NAACP, regurgitating Trump talking points about very bad people coming here.
I mean, like Eric Adams in New York, like I think his literal words were like asylum seekers or something to that effect, right? It's truly wild how quickly like the sense of resource confinement and constraint under our current economic system, right, turns people on each other. And so yeah, it's so easy to other them. Let's do it. And so that is actually like my bigger fear is not really like the immediate like political damage to the Democratic Party, because I think like if they actually got smart about it, they could figure out how to manage that better, both within the states and broader sense federally. But more importantly is the sense that it's like I'm afraid that it has been successful already and will continue to be successful to drive a wedge within the working class, right? Because ultimately what we're talking about is a whole bunch of working class folks trying to figure out a way to survive next to other working class folks. And what we're being told is essentially, even by Democratic leaders, right, is that like, well, it's either us or them.
Mm-hmm.
Which
Mm-hmm.
again isn't like the left position. Obviously, is not. That's not true, right? Like Jeff
Mm.
Bezos went to space. We have money. We can. We have money. That's not the problem here. But of course, that is not the paradigm. We don't get to have that conversation. And so, what I think, sadly, is going to end up happening is that as those pressures continue to mount, because I don't see Abbott stopping that, and I see other, especially if Harris is elected, I see other governors jumping on that ship and that pressure increasing. That unless they figure out something very strong to sort of release the pressure on that issue in those cities, that's going to sour a lot of folks on
Well,
it.
is there anything you can think of that would kind of work in this regard that you think that they're not doing?
I think that broadly speaking, like again, if the Department of Homeland Security had put a lot more resources into getting folks access to work permits, if the party had also, I think, spent a little bit of time trying to think about like, or again, local governments thinking about like where else we could connect with like the Office of Refugee and Resettlement, who does this on a massive nationwide, right?
Mm-hmm.
Literally resettles refugees from the outside. Trying to think about those things in a way that is not reactive necessarily, but sort of taking it in.
So you think
That
there
being
should have been
said, though,
federal intervention, is what you're saying?
yeah, but that being said, the truth is that it's like I don't know that there is a short-term solution absent a fuckload of cash, to be really blunt about it, right?
Mm.
To start alleviating some of those tensions in the bigger cities, because everybody's feeling this squeeze, right? And the conversations even that we have internally are like, if there is another Trump era, we're not going to have the resources, the moral sort of backing and outrage and all that stuff that you were talking about, like kind of ebbs and flows. It's not going to even reach the high point that it reached during the Trump era, where we had folks like really, fired up about this stuff. So if anything, that tension is only going to worsen, I suspect.
Tucson, you want to ask the next question?
Sure. Before I do that, I just want to say that it's an interesting problem as a person in New York City where they are dumping migrants. Yes, a lot of money is being spent on the migrants, but we were kind of outside of the border state issue, and they're pushing it on us and sort of making it our problem. So this is a very new problem to people in Chicago, people in New York City, and we're not responding too well to it. We like the idea of living in a sanctuary city, but rubber's meeting the road now.
Well, because you were forced in a way that seems almost ludicrous to, dump
That's right.
someplace like 20,000 people, like grown men. This isn't like babies. This is
Right.
adults that need services. These are kids that have to go to school. And the homeless populations are increasing because of this, because that housing was temporary. Like most housing is temporary.
Mhm.
And it's not like this population is going to mesh well, as Dan was saying, because like take Chicago, for example. These are mostly Venezuelans that got jumped off there. There's a Mexican population that's been in Chicago now for generations that start back since like the early 1900s. They're pretty entrenched in the city. And they're not very happy with this new influx of migrants.
No.
And sadly, like that has like a really long, sad history in the U.S., right? And it's folks are really quick to pin it to xenophobia, right? But it often, if you look back, it doesn't make a lot of sense, because it's like Italians being looked down by the Irish, and often within similar. So, at any rate, there is this unfortunate trend within there that it's like once folks become assimilated into like especially sort of the American dream part of the identity, it becomes so much easier to shut the door on the folks behind you, because again, the actual question being posed to the folks in Chicago or the folks in New York is not how do we fix this collectively, but rather we only have this much of the pie. Who do you want me to give it to?
Mhm.
Right.
And yeah, folks are going to pick their families. They're going to pick the people that they know over, the ones that just arrived. And that again is again is the really frustrating, and maybe also the point, the sort of tension point to organize, to start trying to get organized around,
It
is like seeing that it's like the unhoused person who's lived in New York City for the last 20 years and the recently arrived, Venezuelan family actually have a lot in common all of a sudden. Um, Now the question is, how do we make power out of that?
Why did we stop talking about releasing the sanctions on Venezuela?
Hmm.
Why did that stop being a talking point? Is it because we can't do two things at once? Or is it was it just the news cycle,
We
right?
can't.
Venezuela has to be a big bad because it has to be the thing you point to and say communism's bad, even though it's not a communist country. But that doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Right. The shadow of Hugo Chavez is big enough. And this idea that Latin America is constantly run crooked. They never know what they're doing.
Yeah.
But there
And
was talk about releasing sanctions there was protests about it, but now those things are just gone by the wayside.
yeah, and in Venezuela's case, there is this strange tension, and it's not, I guess, dissimilar to what happened in the 70s, 80s with Cuba and the Mariel crew that came over, where you have folks who have, again, this notion, because I think, man, 1 in 4 Venezuelans, something like that, 1 in 5 Venezuelans have left the country at this point. So it's like there
Mhm.
is it's a massive amount of people that have left, right? And a significant number of them have at least indicated in polling that they would go back if Maduro left. So I think like the weird sort of question is, yeah, it's like, what do you do when on the one hand it seems like the US has made it a point to continue destabilizing as much as it possibly can that country in the hopes of finding someone far more pliable. And at the same time, that destabilization is literally driving 1 out of every 4 folks out of that country to the
Mhm.
US.
Mhm.
And so, again, there's just this, I think, again, this sort of growing sense of contradiction within both local migration and broader migration that is so far outside of any one country's ability to exercise control over.
See, this was the depressing part we were talking about.
Well, we don't have to be too depressed if we look towards the future and the potential black girl magic that will be Kamala Harris's administration.
You
Are
was
you
reading that like
excited?
it was a question. I thought that was a question. I didn't write that question, did I? Like, Jesus, I don't even do drugs. What would I say that for? There's this. You know what's funny? Dan sent me this thing. Dan Melo sent me this thing, and I could only watch Dan about like 25 minutes of it.
That's
And
fair.
it was this immigration thing of Democrats. What was it called again? The
Immigration Council.
American Association of Democrats for Kamala. And they were just talking about how good she was going to be on immigration, how good she was with DACA. It's like, I don't think she's going to be that wonderful on immigration, and I don't know why people would think that. Why would she have to be? It's not like
And
the
that,
immigrant vote is one that people need.
yeah, I think that's like the really interesting thing is like, what reason would she have to be more benevolent than any of her Democratic predecessors would be, right? Is the American public has been saying for decades at this point that like we all want a solution or some meaningful progress on this issue, and nothing has changed, right? So it's like, why would we think that this would be a different Democratic presidency this way? Now, I guess like folks are ready to point out that when she first came in, I would like to just quickly back up. It's like at the end of the day, she's a prosecutor, right? And so again,
she really can't see and she's a 90s prosecutor, Dan. I've been saying that over and over on the show. She's a black woman of a certain era where you think you can fix the problems within the system. And the last thing she's going to talk about, regardless of who her daddy is capitalism.
Yeah. And
well, before she,
go ahead.
sorry. Before she was that, she was the child of immigrants. Do we not think that?
But
this will have
not
some effect on
those
her?
immigrants, Tucson.
Not those.
Not
No.
she's her parents met at uni. Her mom was like a biologist.
Yeah.
And she's not just a biologist, like run-of-the-mill biologist. And her dad wasn't just like run-of-the-mill.
That's very true.
Economics
they were both
teacher.
extraordinary in their fields.
It's like Obama's like people love that. Oh, he's a child of a single mother. Like he had a stepdaddy. Who the fuck did you think his mama was? Thought he met his mama was at a truck stop diner and met his African ass daddy? What the fuck is wrong with you people? But yeah, she's a child of immigrants. Like you're the child of immigrants, Tucson. We all know you're royalty.
Nice. Just because I was wearing a dashiki today.
Tucson answered the phone with a dashiki on. It's like, shit. You have a time machine with you too, Thelma? What the fuck is wrong with you?
Is this the banter that folks are talking about?
But yeah, you can't. She can say that, and I guarantee you, this is the speech.
Mm-hmm.
She's gonna get up there with her tan pantsuit.
Yeah, she shouldn't wear those.
I know, but she's got. You know what?
She's so tan from head to toe. It doesn't
She's so
work.
fine. She could wear Kwame's polka dot shirt.
Oh God.
You know it. Don't hate. But she'll get up there and be like, as a child of immigrants.
She will.
She got that black woman professional voice. As a child of immigrants, no one knows better than me the plight of the undocumented in this country. And everyone's gonna be really quiet. And that's why I say,
Do not come.
God damn it.
Do not come.
There you go.
Do not come.
that's what you're gonna get. You're gonna get her bragging about, even when Donald Trump was doing his thing at the border, what was the first thing the Dems were saying? Well, we arrested a ton of people too. We don't want you to think that those bad evildoers are getting through.
Right.
You talk about this in your book. This is always boils down to a labor issue, and it's bigger than just people coming to the southern border. Should we talk about H-1B visas?
Yeah, I mean, for example, it's like even if tomorrow, right, they were suddenly able to open up a whole bunch of like whether it's the H-1B, which is by and large tech workers these days who come over, or agricultural visas, right? Like historically, and I suspect now, if there is any movement that happens along this, it will be specifically along very, very select labor channels, right? That becomes expansive, maybe with a dusting or a sprinkling of like humanitarian, again, like immediate relatives of U.S. citizen family members. But again, if there is a need, and it makes an interesting point about even like Trump's mass deportation idea, right? That I don't think would ever actually happen, in part because the labor that would be sucked out of the market all of a sudden by that would be so damaging to a number of systems, including the Social Security system, that I just don't think it, as a policy matter, I don't think it could happen, at least not in the way that he's talking about it. But yeah, even if we turn and like look at like lawful, immigration pathways, there is still plenty of exploitation that goes on by, bringing in tech workers, paying them a fraction of what you would otherwise pay local folks. Again, create tension within the working class, again, sort of gently and then forcefully, eventually pitting
and not
itself
to
against
break.
each other. Go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt you, Dan, but I think you bring up something really important right there. How many young kids, especially young kids going to state universities, I'm talking about the first generation of college kids, You're looking at school. We always, a lot of the academics coming here talk about school is at this point just an accreditation program. That's fine. But don't listen to these GOP people talking about it. It's the Marxists that have taken over the university. Look, Spencer Leonard does not run the university he teaches at.
No.
And I don't say that as a
He
diss to
he
him.
will never
Yeah,
run the
I don't say it as a
university.
this is not a diss. This is just the reality of once you say you're a mark, like if you think that's the dean, like you guys are high out of your mind. These kids go into school to get these degrees in computer science so they can get out there and code and find out that the majority of these jobs are either moved overseas or taken by people with H-1B visas. Do you think this will indoctrinate a younger generation into a xenophobic hate?
I at least I certainly hope that some of like the other cultural forces would prevent that. But nevertheless, again, I think if Chicago, New York are any evidence, right, it just doesn't take long when people perceive that someone else is taking food out of their mouths to turn on them, right? And it is something that sadly, or maybe favorably for change, sort of transcends racial, religious, all kinds of other lines, right? Because it's such a core sense of scarcity under capitalism that, yeah, when those folks start to enter the market and realize, again, that Microsoft, Google, what have you, are paying folks a fraction of what they should be and bringing them in, not even being able to get a job at this point. Yeah, I don't think that folks are going to turn and look at Google and be like, what the fuck, guys? Why are, first of all, labor trafficking, like, what? And then, work up from there. No, instead they're going to be like, yeah, no, it was those Indian folk who came in and took our jobs.
Someone wants to know what you think about Biden's initiative to give undocumented spouses green cards.
Yeah, I mean, this is honestly, that's the best that I hope for in a Harris presidency at the end of 4 years, is that there is some minuscule window for folks to get through for certain family members of, again, like U.S. citizens. But in terms of like the mass migration issue, there, I expect it to at base status quo, which is awful, and probably just continue to get worse and more militarized.
Always with the good news. I mean, are they hiring more Border Patrol people right now?
I actually have not looked recently. I want to say that at least in ICE, I think they're having trouble at this point filling jobs, because I mean, at the end of the day, these jobs are also really poorly paid and shitty, especially at the border. Jason,
Are you making more than you make at? Hey, do you make more than you make at Amazon?
Amazon, that's the standard.
Do you get to have a gun and tell people no? An anal cavity your ass, that's secondary. You know how many single moms? You know how many single moms I see at the border stop? I mean, not in the car crossing the border. I mean, like telling me to shut the fuck up and turn.
I was gonna say, like, ask.
I was gonna say too.
No, I mean, like working there. I shouldn't say they might not be single moms, but
single moms. They have a look.
They have a look. And ponytails in a certain direction. I'm like, die. That state. I think he was a deadbeat. But you're gonna make more money than you're gonna make at Amazon. You're gonna have benefits and a pension.
You're gonna boss people around. And
a union. And you get to carry a gun.
Yeah,
I think 8 people watching the show right now just applied.
Yeah.
I mean, local detention, like the private detention centers that are spread throughout the country, right? Like, this is exactly what has worked for them, is that like it's been a boost to local economies, right? Because they come in and they hire a bunch of folks who, after manufacturing left, have no job. Like, come in and give a bunch of folks a gun and be like, hey, you get to look over brown people with a gun. Aren't you happy?
And so, they didn't commit a crime. They were just here.
Yeah, they're just here.
The word? Dude, and that's another thing people don't talk about. All these private, because you're talking about the private facilities. I'm just talking about the border.
Oh yeah, and
yeah.
so again, if that
Yeah.
works for the private sector, yeah, I suspect that
Yeah.
if things get bad enough, yeah,
But the
they'll
private facilities do pay crap. It's probably not making as much as Amazon, but you might not have an Amazon factory or warehouse in your hood.
yeah, in Farmville, Virginia, yeah, probably.
But you do have a facility for civil detention. And as we love talking about mass incarceration, I think we've said this before on the show. One of the big things that's missed in the new Jim Crow, purposely omitted, is civil detention. It just doesn't exist in her world because it didn't fit the theory narrative. But it's what these private prisons are getting built for, and they're all over the country. And they're for people that just get caught.
Yeah, it's literally, I mean, a solid, I'd say half to 3/4 of my job is litigating in federal court, like getting folks out of detention who have either just been there for prolonged periods while their immigration cases have dragged on for a year, 2 years. And again, litigating not even to get them out, but actually just to get them a chance to have a bond hearing. So it's literally the chance to ask to get out. Is how bad like the civil detention context is here. So yeah, in all other aspects, if you go, it looks like a prison. Many of them were like former federal Bureau of Prisons that were just purchased by these things, and it's a multi-billion-dollar industry at this point. So that's also not going anywhere it didn't stop under Biden, and it's certainly not going to stop.
No, it's look. It's the sad reality of where we are, and that's the new manufacturing is people. If you can put them to work, you will. There's going to be a handful that will work in certain industries, undocumented. No one's going to complain, because if you do a sweep every so often to make certain donor bases feel good about themselves, there's a whole bunch you can just let out or just take in. It's a massive reserve army of labor.
Yeah, and clearly is one that is not going anywhere in terms of coming here. So now I truly think that the next sort of horizon of immigration is not actually going to be like physical enforcement of borders, but rather like how do we track and follow people as they move around, or push the problem move the
North?
safety valve, if you will, further south, right, to where there's more of a choke point, like along Panama or the very, south of Mexico. But at any rate, somehow, right, capitalism will either regain control sort of that labor political dynamic that's happening now globally, being pushed to our southern border, or things are just going to fall apart. I have no idea which.
Jeez.
Well,
so we'll end with this. We've been going for an hour, and thank you so much, Dan, for taking the time to talk to us. And are you coming with us to the Champagne Room?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's just say Donald Trump wins. I don't think he will. I've been saying for the last couple years. I just want to keep saying that on the record so you guys know I didn't just jump on this Kamala train like the rest of you.
What if she loses Michigan?
Doesn't matter. Kamala's in, dude. Just face it, Toussaint. You got to pay for my McDonald's, okay? You lost the bet. Teray lost the bet. Pascal lost the bet. Everybody lost the bet. Anyway, let's just say I lose the bet and Trump comes in again. Cuba had said something kind of interesting, because immigration is going to be something that Trump can lean hard on. He's not going to lean hard on Palestine, right? That's going to keep going. Let's just say he goes kind of like he did with the border wall, but instead of the border wall, to your point, he goes, you know what we need to do? We need to get these bad dudes out of the country, and we're going to do a mass hiring, because immigration sweeps are expensive. And let's just say that's his Marshall Plan. That's his New Deal. We're gonna rid the world, just much like the War on Terror. We're gonna rid the world of unwanted browns. Maybe some whites will get caught up in there too, because you're ridding the world. There's a lot of people that are gonna get caught up in there. but you start hiring agents, maybe even form a new agency. You add some bureaucratic positions. Do you see Trump trying to do something like that? And if he was able to do something like that, would America be on board if you're employing that many people?
So, I really do go back and forth a little bit on this of like the question of like true like martial law level mass deportation. What I think we can be fairly certain of is that he's going to have an honest go at some kind of, whether it's just really a stunt in terms of its effectiveness, or actually is truly as awful as he sort of is forecasting. I do think that he's going to have some sort of push, right, to start removing people en masse, or at least make it seem like he's trying to remove people en masse. And Jason, before I had jumped on, I honestly hadn't thought about it in those terms. But it's like I do think, if you look kind of flip back at some of his other rhetoric around immigration, I do think it would be a selling point for him to try to spin it almost as like we're reclaiming American jobs, right? We're reclaiming American manufacturing and agriculture, like sort of like tucking it all into this sort of like working class narrative, almost like fascist light. Like the problem really is these folks, and if we just get these folks out of here, we're going to be able to, right our economy and fix our political situation. Now, practically, like you pointed out, right? Practically speaking, monetarily, like even if you start calling up National Guard, it's just not really feasible. It would be a logistical hurdle that I just don't think you could do in 4 years, even if you wanted to. That being said, I do think that it would be a really easy sell to at least to its base, right? That it's like, this is not only what you want for like, all the weird moralistic reasons that they seem to think they have, but also like, look, there's an economic reason that I'm giving you. Now, that's easily debunked. There's been a shitload of studies about, again, like why that's not going to work and be if anything, just punch a hole in the economy. So I do think that business interest ultimately might undercut him that way, because again, like you can't completely remove the available reserve army of labor that's here right now in the interior.
I mean, look, I don't want to see that happen, but who thought he was going to try to build a border wall where you didn't need one? Right?
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Look, you don't have to deport who you don't want to deport, right? Toussaint?
You don't have
safe?
to deport who you don't want to deport.
You don't want to, yeah. You'd be like, don't take the maid, please.
No.
Please, I don't want
maid is
to.
legal.
Please don't, I can't have you do that, please. Donnie. Please don't. I'd appreciate it if you didn't.
I gotta tell you, like a year ago, somebody was banging on a neighbor's door out here saying that they were ICE, and I was shook. I'm a citizen. I was born here.
Have you ever seen a deportation happen?
I was shook. Turns out it was just her friend making a joke.
That's not funny.
That was not funny.
Your friend's a dick.
That's not friends.
Yeah. You ever seen people get like swept up?
Not cool.
I've never seen anybody stop it. Never.
Yeah.
I saw it twice coming in or going to when I worked in the South. You got to cross these border checkpoints. And they snatch your ass up real quick. And nobody says boo. Sorry.
Those cats think they're God. Like,
yeah. It's and they're super, dude. It's the most uncomfortable thing. I shouldn't even be talking about this right now because I do cross the border a lot. I don't. Oh, what do you do? Because they ask you, what do you do for a living again? Oh, this is revolution, huh?
Yeah, right this way. Secondary.
Yeah. We got an appointment for you in secondary.
Full search.
Make sure you look long and hard up that guy's anus.
Wow.
Oh my god.
Yeah, I don't want that to happen.
This really is the banter that people are
See, Bill says the only time I saw roundups was in LA after the 92 riots. It's, dude, you can watch that shit in a movie and it's moving. When you see it in real life, you know what everybody says? Pfft, wonder what he did.
Right.
He was working at the grocery store. Now he's fucking, he got dropped off somewhere. He has no idea where he's at.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a lot of people can, was it cognitive dissonance really sets in? Let me record this with my phone. Yeah, thanks.
Oh.
Can you imagine me being hella mad, Toussaint, and like secondary, like the people that watch my show will not stand for this. Oh, we finna live stream your shit, buddy.
Oh my god. You just start screaming out your social security number.
3, 8.
I'm like Dustin Hoffman in the Marathon Man. No, man. The Border Patrol, very fine people.
Lovely folks.
Lovely people. Lovely people. I show them, because you have to show your passport right when you get to the gate, when you're getting to the border thing, and I always smile when I show it to them. I turn into Ben Vereen as well. Hey there, guy. Oh, sure is chilly this evening.
Was he Chicken George? Chicken George. Is who you turn into?
I turn into Chicken George. Mr. Bojangles. I'm not trying to get an anal cavity search because somebody watched my show. Hey, we recognize you, the motherfucker that be talking that shit. Nah, man. Single mom, huh? Show you what a single mom does.
For the Black Hebrew Israelites.
Yeah, there's a bunch of Hebrew Israelite border patrol guards just sitting there, and you hear that music from the 80s whenever black people show up. Doo-doo-doo. Doo-doo-doo-doo.
What has even happened?
Racism, Dan. Racism is happening.
Racism.
They call me Mr. Tibbs.
Yo.
Look, we're going to the
That
champagne
was
room.
out of line, but also hilarious. It's like,
Before
I
we
take what I
go,
said back about ice. All right, we can deport Drake.
Yeah. I'm working covertly with ICE. That's how I get out of the anal cavity search. Like, I'll help you get Drake. Drake.
you've been trying to get him for years.
You can do that? Just please. Remove that man's arm. It's all the way in it to the elbow.
My God. So
This is
before
just
we
a
go,
taste of what you guys are going to get in the champagne room.
Oh man.
I want to know what Dan's shirt says.
Oh.
We can't read it because it's reverse. You got to reverse.
Oh,
your
hang on.
screen.
Dude, can I flip? Hang on. Let me.
You can
mirror
flip
my
it.
Video. I can do this.
You can flip it and reverse it. There you go. Reality called it sucked.
Just for you. Just for you.
That's how I feel about this issue. It's kind of one of those issues that sadly, maybe this is why people don't like to talk about it. I don't think it's the only reason people don't like to talk about it, because there is no like single solution. Like, oh, if we just do X, Y, and Z.
Mm-hmm.
Like, no.
Yeah. They're truly. I mean, at this point, it's like, other than like, well, let's just end capitalism and then we can start working.
Oh, I'm
It's
paid.
like, yeah, all right,
Mhm.
got it.
I'm down. I'm down. I mean, what if, let's just say, in a magical world, let's just say magical world. I can't even say this with a straight face because it's so ridiculous. Someone did this to me on the interview. They're like, let me do a thought experiment with you. I was like, no.
No,
I just like, no.
no, I'm a
He's like,
materialist.
no, just play with me. I was like, well, no. I'm not going to. No, I can't.
No.
Because there's no, I don't see any pressure on or any reasoning for a Harris administration or Trump, any administration, to relieve some of the sanctions on a place like Venezuela.
Yeah, I mean, you know, again, like they tried the nice liberal thing of sort of like trying to tackle corruption and then tried the strong arm in other places, you know, again, whether that's Cuba, Venezuela. And at the end of the day, right, that's like, if you're going to continue destabilizing places, people are going to leave. And that's just the reality. And now, again, I just don't even know that it matters if we started large scale, like positive interventions on this side of the hemisphere, because like you pointed out, we've got the whole other side of the world that's ready to pack up and move to get away from their problems.
We should let people know what America is really like. Like whenever I went to get mail the other day, and at the mail place, they were like, doesn't everyone in America have a pension? I was like, no. Because I live in a senior community, and all these seniors have a pension. So they're like, they don't all have pensions. I was like, no. No. The streets aren't paved with gold. No.
Most people don't have pensions.
I was like,
I don't know anyone who has a pension.
I don't think I do either.
Like if I took you to the States, I think you'd just run back here real quick. Like, ooh, adios míos. It's not.
The food is shit. Like
That's not what I heard at all. What are these $5 tacos all about? They're about nothing. That's what it's about. Not a goddamn. But we'll be in the champagne room. Continuing to talk a little shit with Dan. Tucson has some videos she wants you to see. Anything you want to say before we leave Tucson?
No, just feeling strong, feeling demure, feeling very mindful.
Once again,
as the kids say.
Once again, you're calling me the N-word.
We're starting here and we're ending here. All right.
Yeah, exactly, because that's where she wanted to do it. She wanted to prove to the world, all 14 people that are watching, she wanted to prove to them all that she's the better person. I get it. Get one dashiki, and all of a sudden, the whole fucking shit is fucked up. How can one dashiki undermine all this?
This show got very black.
CMB.
Very, very black. You're going to need a dictionary for this.
Oh, boy.
Right after I write that AAV piece, I wrote that AAVE piece about that, and all of a sudden, I don't understand anything you said. I have no idea what he said.
He's not even speaking English. I don't know.
We all we got. What does that mean? Oh, it's a reference from New Jack City. I didn't watch that movie. There were black people in it.
Well, hey, before we go to the champagne room, if I can just really plug Revol Press.
Oh, why did I forget that? Yes.
No, sorry. Yeah, we just launched into nonsense and immigration. Yeah, Mike Watson and I started a press this year. Bram Given's book, The Darkest Timeline, is out now. It is fantastic. If you haven't watched his interview with Jason, it is so good. It's so fucking good. And then, yeah, Mike Watson has his next book coming out. You can pre-order it on our website, revolpress.com. And it'll be out in your favorite capitalist retailers on the 27th.
I like Mike Watson's book, and I love talking to Mike. And that was a despite it was raining while I was having that conversation with Mike, and I was outside. But it was I dig talking to Mike. It's much like I dig talking to you, and I'm glad I got to meet Graham through you guys. I thought we had a fun time talking, and I'm excited for the press. And I probably need to talk to you off air about some things, all things righty.
Some righty.
But Saturday, the show will not be live. It'll be a pre-recorded interview that I did with Ashley Frowley. I know a lot of times when we pre-recorded shows come on, you guys don't watch them because we can't interact with the chat. I will say this. no one, in my opinion, is really talking about the subject that Ashley and I talked about with it, which is euthanizing poor people and mentally ill people, and how common it is. It's slowly making its way into the U.S. 4%, I believe, of the deaths in Canada are from euthanization. That's way bigger number than I thought. And it, like I said, it's slowly rolling out in places like Oregon. But when you take a look at a lot of the laws that are being enacted right now, as far as, especially in places like California, as far as like seeing people that, you know, mental distress or showing signs of substance abuse and being able to throw them in a facility, and the reality that there isn't a lot of facilities, being able to go up to a person and be like, hey, you want to end it? We can end it for you. Like, wait. You're not, your life isn't going to get much better. You're still going to be all homelessly and unemployable. We can just, and that's a reality in I think New Zealand, Canada. So we talk about that on the show. It's a dark show. It's not a fun show, but it's an important show because all these things, in my opinion, are intertwined. And we need to be more knowledgeable about them. So please check that show out Saturday. It's pre-recorded. It's going to start on time. There's that. There's that. So thank you guys for hanging out with us. We'll see you guys in the champagne room, and we are
out.